A gigantic report just dropped from Sherania of The Athletic. Apparently, the Celtics are interested in trading for Ben Simmons, but it would have to include Jaylen Brown. Oof. Okay, I know that Celtic fans hope this never happens, but the C's know that Philly is looking for a gigantic package. They know it will take either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, but they're still interested. This could actually happen. And the reason this could actually happen is Brad Stevens. This dude was the coach for years with this roster, watching Danny Ainge too afraid to make the big move. They could have traded for James Harden or Kawhi Leonard or Anthony Davis or Paul George, and Danny Ainge didn't want to break up the young core. Well, they never made the finals, and Brad Stevens had to actually be on the floor with that group every single day wondering what it would have been like. So now, Brad Stevens has been moved into the front office, hopefully to take a more aggressive approach. And he said that he would, and he is still evaluating this team. Well, Ben Simmons for Jaylen Brown would be super aggressive. And I've seen C's fans wondering, are Jaylen and Jason kind of redundant? I mean, they do the same thing. Maybe it would be better if we flipped one of them and if not got like a much better player, at least a different talented player. And honestly, you can see that I just got my hair cut. I was just at the barber and I met a guy named Tyson, and it is rare that you move to a town and almost immediately find a barber that you love. This dude cut my hair well. He loved basketball and he watches NBA YouTube. His favorite YouTuber is Funky Diabetic. He had never heard of AM Hoops. That's totally fine. But I went into this haircut thinking, you know, Jaylen Brown for Ben Simmons is probably not a good idea. And I left it actually hoping the trade goes down. And the number one thing really is like just recency bias. Everyone hates Ben Simmons and he's just been turned into everyone's least favorite basketball player based on what we just saw. His horrible fourth quarters against the Atlanta Hawks and the fact that he passed up the dunk. And now everyone is basically looking at his entire game and pushing it all to the side and just remembering that one moment. But in reality, this dude won Rookie of the Year. He's a 3-time All-Star. He's a 2-time All-Defensive Player, and he was second in voting for Defensive Player of the Year last year. Jaylen Brown is a 1-time All-Star. And it reminded me of the recency bias for like Paul George. Last year, going into this season, everyone swore that Paul George was a scrub. He's good for nothing because he clanked it off the side of the backboard Game 7 for the Clippers in the bubble. And then he comes out last year, he leads the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard past the Jazz, and he was really competitive against the Suns. The Clippers lost the better team. This year, he is playing like an MVP on most nights for the Clippers. So all those people would have traded Paul George for like 10 cents on the dollar at the beginning of last year, and ever since then, he's shown that you should never judge a player just based on the last bad thing that you saw. Also, we have seen Ben Simmons for years in the regular season be a badass, right? And the playoffs are so magnified that any little mistake there gets blown way out of proportion. Ben Simmons is super undervalued. I think he would look so good on the Celtics. Just think about Ben with Jason Tatum obviously as the number one. Playing great defense, cutting to the basket, moving off the ball, leading the team in transition, athletic dunks like Giannis. And I think Ben's game, and more importantly his mind, would be completely refreshed being on a different team in a different city with a different group of teammates. And these Celtics have a definite ceiling. We have seen how high they can go, and they don't have many moves to make because they're right up next to the salary cap. And I guess you could say, okay, well, if we're going to trade Jaylen Brown, we should hold off for another star. We don't know who that other star is, and that's the mistake that the Celtics have been making for years. Oh, this just isn't good enough. Like, we're afraid Anthony Davis is going to leave just after this year, so never mind, we're not going to go after the guy who's right in front of us we could get. We're going to wait for the next star. You have no guarantee that that next star is going to come. What you do know is you have a generational type talent in Ben Simmons, even though he's got flaws. I'm not saying this trade is perfect, but he is out there for the taking. We have already seen this report from Sean saying, okay, if you want Ben Simmons, it's going to take Jaylen Brown. The old regime with Danny Ainge was too afraid to pull the trigger. I think Brad Stevens should pull the trigger because with the right mindset, I think Ben Simmons is a game changer and he fits well on this team. Obviously, he's not a perfect fit because they have Robert Williams who plays the 5, and Robert Williams doesn't really have range, but we've seen Al Horford definitely has range, and he could play center. But the truth is, Ben Simmons is going to be an awkward fit on any team as long as he's not shooting threes. And so I think even though it's not a perfect trade and not a perfect fit, no team is going to be, you have to pull the trigger if you're the Celtics to say, we need to shake this thing up and go in a different direction because we've seen how good this group can be. It's good, but it's not good enough. The rest of the East is passing us up. Like before, the Celtics clearly had like the best young core. Everyone would have voted them for like the best future in the NBA, definitely the East, right? And that's when they were making Eastern Conference Finals with the young core. Okay, that's topped out, dude. The rest of the East has passed you by. The Hawks are probably better, have a higher ceiling. Obviously, the Nets didn't wait around. Let's build our young core. No, let's not make crazy trades. We've got D'Angelo Russell. We have Karis LeVert. You know, we're just making it. No, the Nets obviously know. If you've got like a big move to make, you just roll the dice, dude. If it blows up in your face, at least you tried. Obviously, the Bucks just won a championship, so they've passed them up. They've passed everyone up in the East. And then, of course, you have Philly, who is number 1 in the East right now, even without Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris for some games. And now Joel Embiid's going to be out with COVID protocol. And by the way, Joel Embiid, why does everyone act like Ben Simmons is the only guy? Like, I feel like sometimes people whittle the NBA and arguments down to like too simple of an argument. Like when people talk about who's the best player ever, MJ versus LeBron, like they'll always say, oh, it's MJ, he's got 6 rings. Oh, it's MJ, he went 6 for 6. It's like, dude, if you're going to argue that, and that's fine, the argument has to be a lot deeper than just that. I hate to see these super simple arguments, and I feel like people are just pointing to Ben like he is the biggest problem with the Sixers. He is the evil one, the bad one. We hate him. That's too simple. Joel Embiid has a lot of blame too. Like last year, he went 4 for 20 in game 4 against the Hawks. 4 for 20. In the game that they just totally blew the big lead, game 6, 9 for 24. He had 8 turnovers in game 6 and 7. You know, the all-important game 7 when we all remember Ben Simmons missing the dunk. Embiid had 8 turnovers, including one that was really important in the final few minutes of the fourth quarter. Oh, and Embiid just gets a pass for getting swept in the bubble in the first round of the playoffs without Ben Simmons. Embiid just gets a pass on all this. Oh no, Ben Simmons is the only... No, people have swung way on the wrong end of Ben Simmons, oversimplifying him being the problem with the Sixers, giving him all of the blame, just remembering the last bad thing that we saw about him and using that as a way to write off his entire game. People have sold so low on Ben Simmons that they don't see that this can work. They don't see how it can work until they actually see it on the court, and they're like, oh wow, okay, look at that. Oh hey, yeah, he's actually a really good fit with Jason Tatum and Marcus Smart and Al Horford and those guys. And you know what? I like the Celtics now. I like how aggressive the front office was and finally shook things up. So, I was cooking up some trades, and by the way, forget all the big draft picks and forget the multiple players. I think that Ben's stock has fallen enough for this to almost be like a 1-for-1 trade. So this is one that I think could work. The Celtics get Ben Simmons and the Sixers get Jaylen Brown and Bruno Fernando to make the salary work. So we've spent this whole video talking about why the Celtics should do it for good reason, because most people don't see why the Celtics should do it. And honestly, I would love to see this trade go down, so I wanted to lay out that case. But what about for the Sixers? Well, Jaylen Brown is not a point guard. And honestly, I think point guard is their biggest area of need. Tyrese Maxey has actually been really good after like that first week of the season. He's improved, but I'm kind of afraid of what Tyrese Maxey is going to look like being the number 1 point guard in the playoffs. Maybe they look for a point guard in the buyout market or something. So you get a wing in Jaylen Brown. He's a little redundant with, say, a Tobias Harris, right? But he is a guy who can drop, 20 to 30 points on any given night. He is a two-way athletic wing. Not that they need like a whole lot of defense. They've got Matisse Thybulle, they've got Joel Embiid, but Ben Simmons, obviously an elite defender. It would be nice to replace some of that. Also, I like the injury insurance for Joel Embiid missing time, which he already is going to, or Tobias Harris, who did. I mean, COVID had to do with both of those, but especially Embiid, he could come down with a legitimate injury at any time. And so I think it would be nice to have somebody who can be the clear number 1 in your offense again. Ben Simmons was great for that because Embiid would miss time, and so you had Ben to lean on in terms of winning games offensively. Well, Jaylen Brown can clearly be that guy. On most nights so far, he's been the best offensive player for the Celtics. And honestly, they're winning games right now, like when Embiid is out, or Tobias Harris for those games with like George Niang coming up big, or Furkan Korkmaz, or Seth Curry. Like, that's not sustainable. Jaylen Brown is clearly sustainable. But it would just be a lot of fun for both of these teams to make this trade. And before talking to Tyson the Barber, I really couldn't make a solid case, but after our discussion, I really think that there's a way that Brad Stevens and Celtics fans could make this work in their head to actually execute the trade. And honestly, look, yeah, the Sixers need a point guard. I think my number one choice would probably be CJ McCollum, but Jaylen Brown is right under him. And for all we know, CJ McCollum is not available, and we haven't heard the types of trade interest that we have, like from the Celtics. This is a legitimate report from a legitimate reporter, Shams, and we just haven't seen that from the Blazers. And the fact that they've won so many home games in a row and they just beat the Lakers, like maybe the Blazers don't want to shake things up. I do think there's an urgency and a desire in Boston to shake things up. And honestly, I love the idea of Ben Simmons. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Also, check this video out about why Draymond Green should go to the Blazers. Like, forget trading out, CJ doing stuff like that. You need to bring talent in. And a new rumor says that Damian Lillard has literally been obsessed with Draymond for years. And this video lays out how it could actually happen.